Welcome back, and we're here with Roman Baber, leadership candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. And in our last segment, we were just talking about some of the issues that was dealing with healthcare and mental health. But there's other very important issues also. And as you are aware, there's a societal shift happening in the world. And Roman, you've been alluding to this numerous times during your visits to different parts of Canada, highlighting your message: democracy needs to be preserved. You've lived through an autocratic country and believe it's not good for society. Can you tell us more about the crisis of Western democracy versus autocracy and what can be done about it?
As you mentioned, I spent the first 9 years of my life under a communist regime. That's why I know how precious and how fragile Canada's democracy is. One of the hallmarks of democracy is that we respect choice, human choice, and human dignity. And we're still treating 15% like second-class citizens, even though it makes absolutely no sense in the science. The vaccine does not stop the spread or reduce transmission. And so any suggestion that somehow any of this is demonstrably justifiable, be it passports or mandates, is nonsensical at this point. We're still making Canadians choose between their ability to put food on the table and their personal healthcare choice. And for the record, we'll still agree that it's still a choice. But making someone choose something under a threat of not being able to keep a roof over their head is no longer a choice. I'm also very concerned about the erosion of our freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is the holy grail of all rights, because through speech we defend all other rights and all other Canadians. And so it's not just good for democracy, it's also good for public policy. The only reason why government would seek to abridge speech is to silence its political opponents. And we should all oppose that directly. That's why I'm going to repeal the censorship legislation. I'm going to defend regulated professionals and their ability to speak without fear of reprisal. We're going to have a serious conversation with social media companies. And I'm also going to free the media and ensure that there is no financial independence by media on government.
I absolutely agree with that, because, I mean, the whole reason why media, well, back in the day, it was called the Fifth Estate. It was called the Fifth Estate for a reason. Because it was a means for people to have another state that could actually influence society and do good. But now with the influx of social media, as you said, and all different forms, now I don't even use the word journalism. I use the word media, because really at the end of the day, many places that do report so-called news, I don't even call it news anymore. I call it's someone's stance or position, because there's no journalistic integrity with it. And so, yeah, that would be very helpful. I think that'll be good for society. And in a way, I do think it will help preserve some of the democratic rights and freedoms that I believe many Canadians hold dear. But
we have to remember, Michelle, if I may, the role of the media, and that is to shine a light of transparency on government and keep it accountable. But how can media keep government accountable when the government signs its paycheck? It's absolutely impossible.
Exactly.
Right?
That's why I said Fifth Estate needs to be separated.
Whether it's the direct funding, whether it's the bailouts and subsidies. We didn't just have the $600 million round in 2019. We had another round right before the last federal election, a $62 million round to the news media. Imagine, right before an election, the government hands over the media money. It's something you'd expect of a banana republic. And finally, we also need to make sure that we end this unprecedented advertising, this record advertising that we've seen in the last couple of years by government on the news media. The government has essentially been keeping the media afloat, and there's a rule in advertising: you do not piss off the advertiser. So any suggestion that our media is still somehow holding the government accountable is simply not credible.
Yeah, I believe so. And don't forget, you were talking about direct, but I would even advocate indirect, because as you know, in Ontario, there's indirect ways that sometimes governments can also influence media, such as the Toronto Star. So I think that, some of your policies should be put in place, because there needs to be some form of accountability. And as you said, the media, well, at least the Fifth Estate was supposed to be that integral box. So other than the media and putting like mainstream media, I would advocate that even social media, there should be some checks within social media. What is your stance on that?
Absolutely. Well, yes, 100%. Initially, they were supposed to be platforms, right? They're not supposed to be called confrontation mechanisms. And they certainly should not be deciding what is right and what is wrong. And this is why I'm committed that if Facebook, if Twitter are the public square, then they ought to behave like the public square. If I'm successful to lead our country, then I will ask the Bureau of Competition to have a serious conversation with the social media companies and say, look, you enjoy all sorts of protections as a technological monopoly, including some liability protections, I believe. And so if you're going to be censoring Canadian speech online or deciding what is true or what is not true, then maybe we need to rethink some of these frameworks.